Hello nurses, and welcome to Travel Nursing Insider. If this is your first time on my channel, I do hope that you subscribe. This is an educational channel that I created for people who are either currently travel nurses or looking to get into the travel nursing industry in the future. And I created this to educate and empower nurses to take control of your career when you get into the travel nursing industry. I am a former travel nurse recruiter of over 5 years, and as a senior recruiter, I did full cycle recruiting, and a large portion of my job had to do with contract negotiations and making sure that I was giving the nurses exactly what they wanted for their contract. So this is the second video in a series where I am going over negotiation techniques. And today's video is going to be on when is the appropriate time to negotiate pay. So stay tuned. There are really two options when it comes to deciding when the appropriate time to negotiate pay is. Option number one is before you receive a contract offer, and option number two is after you receive a contract offer. So I will be going over the pros and cons to each of those options. Keep in mind though that some agencies do not allow for contract negotiations. Their pay package are pre-drafted and set in stone, in which case you can learn what their pay package is and decide to work with that agency, or you could go ahead and shop around to other agencies. Know your worth. Know that there are more contracts than there are nurses to work those contracts. Negotiating pay before a contract offer. It's the safe way to go. It's safe and preferred for agencies, and it's also safe for the nurse. However, it might not be the best way to go. You decide. Now, I've been a recruiter for about 9 years now in various industries, and from my very first recruiting job, I was early 20s, and I sat down, and one of the first things my trainer told me was that never tell a candidate what the pay is first. Whoever states the rate of pay first is the weakest link in the conversation. Now, when I was a travel nurse recruiter, I would kind of dread pay package negotiations. I can't speak for all recruiters, but I can speak for myself that it was an uncomfortable conversation, one that I just really didn't want to have. I didn't like to get into heated debates. I really just like to get to know what the nurse was looking for and give them what they wanted. And I would do an intake conversation with brand new nurses who were reaching out to me for contracts. And one of the first questions I would be asked usually was, how much do you pay? What are your pay packages? In which case I was like, yay, they're giving me the power now. So by asking that question, I already had a prepared rebuttal question, and the power was then in my hand. So I would ask the nurse, well, what are you looking for in terms of pay? Now I'm saying they give me the power at that point because I am trying to get them to tell me what their sweet spot is, or a range that they're looking for in terms of pay. And I could then draft a contract that met what they were looking for in terms of pay. And I could get it all over with. I could get them locked down and secured so that I could start submitting them to contracts and be pretty sure that they would select my agency. Negotiating pay with your agency is, after you've received an offer, it's definitely a risk. It's not the safest way to go, but it's a very strong negotiation tactic, and it puts the ball in your court to really negotiate for exactly what you want. Now, I'll tell you a story about a nurse named Bill. Bill was an OR nurse. He called me one day. He wanted to know about the contracts that I had available, more about the facilities, the units, if any were offering crisis rates, if any required him to be on call, things like that. He didn't say anything about pay. Now, when I asked him what he was looking for in terms of pay, he flat out told me with confidence that he does not discuss pay before he receives an offer, and that he would not lock anything down with me before he received an offer. So at this point, I go to my supervisor, I tell her about Bill and all of his great experience, show her his resume, and she really doesn't want to work with him because it was kind of an unspoken rule that we had everything worked out before we started submitting nurses to contracts. But I wanted to work with him. He was an OR nurse, and we had a lot of contracts out there for OR nurses. So I worked with him. I started submitting him to contracts. Bill receives a contract offer. And at this point, I'm kind of freaking out a little bit because I know that the hospital wants Bill. The offer is with Bill. The hospital doesn't really care about what agency that Bill works with. Bill could easily take his offer and run to the agency down the street. Okay, so I talk with Bill, and he negotiates with me. He tells me what he wants in his pay package, and he's asking for a high rate. And it was honestly something that I knew that my supervisor wouldn't agree to. I knew that I couldn't do. The hospital had a low bill rate to begin with. So I really wanted him to choose our agency, and I thought, well, okay, let me just ask this hospital if they will do a higher bill rate. So I go to the client, I tell them I could not get him at the bill rate that they offered, and if they would go for an increased bill rate, and I told them a dollar figure. And like I said, they wanted Bill, and they agreed to the higher bill rate. Now, under a normal situation where I would have already negotiated the pay package before the offer was ever received, I would have known that Bill would be asking for a high rate of pay, and that I could probably just go on recruiting other nurses, and he could shop around to other agencies, and he just wouldn't be a main focus to me anymore. But in this case, I had already had an offer. I could, taste the money. I knew that this would be a deal that we would make. So I had that incentive to go to the client and ask for a higher bill rate, which, honestly, it was not something that I would frequently do. Keep in mind that these negotiation techniques are just examples of techniques that were used on me when I was a travel and nurse recruiter. Might not work the same way for you. It might not work with every agency, but it might be beneficial to give these techniques a try. To the nurses who've reached out to me via email recently, thank you so much for your kind emails. I really enjoyed reading your emails and engaging with you. If you are a nurse and you have any questions for me, or you'd like to reach out to me, you can reach out to me via email at travelnursinginsider@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram under Travel Nursing Insider, and Twitter under Travel RN Insider. If you are currently a traveling nurse or someone thinking about pursuing becoming a traveling nurse, I'm so happy that you've decided to follow your dreams or live your dreams and help multiple communities throughout our country. And thank you so much for all that you do.